Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and meteorologist DT from WeatherIst, your captain of chaos, your colonel of confusion, your commander of chaos. We're going to talk about this week in weather and mainly November as we head into the cold season and finish up the autumn and see what things are looking like. Right now, it doesn't look that good if you're a winter weather lover, but there are all sorts of things out there to take a look at. So let's get right to it. So we'll start out with the basics here. This is the immediate upper air patterns here. This is the European model from 12Z here on Thursday. You can see what's going on here. On the left hand side, this is November 4th, and then we have November 5th. So we have this massive trough here in the Rockies on the west coast. That's driving the whole pattern, and a very strong ridge has developed over the past couple of days on the east coast. And as this trough amplifies, the ridge is going to get stronger. And the other thing that I want to point out here is this feature here. You can see that upper level low, and we'll see it here and here. So here's the trough right there, see that? And then here's the ridge, there you go. Okay, and there's the next piece of energy in the Gulf of Alaska. So this piece is going to get kicked up into the upper Midwest, going to become a huge storm this weekend and drop a lot of rain in the Midwest. Now, many of you folks in the East aren't aware of how dry it has been in the upper Midwest and how low the river levels have been, but take a minute and Google this information about the river levels in the Mississippi River. And Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio River, the dryness has been really quite pronounced August, September, and October. So they really could use this wetter pattern. And all this energy here coming in is really going to impact the plains of the Midwest with significant rain events over the next couple of weeks. Now, that's not good for winter weather lovers east of the Mississippi River, but it does have a couple of positive aspects to take a look at besides the rainfall. So we'll get into that. So this here is the upper low that goes in here. So then from here, we're going to take a look at the surface map. So here is Friday evening, Saturday morning. There's the big storm. You can see it develops. It develops in Texas and Oklahoma, goes up into Missouri and Iowa. Becomes quite a big system here with a lot of rain and a lot of thunderstorms probably in these areas. I mean, I can't see how this is not on the eastern side of the front, not going to be a big thunderstorm event for these areas. And then you can see there's that low beginning to form over the Bahamas. With the big high off the coast. So we're getting a lot of very warm temperatures here on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And what happens is, as the low, paste it here, let me see, can paste it, here we go. So as the low moves up here into the Great Lakes, it runs up against the ridge and the cold front falls apart. You see what happens here? The front falls apart. But this system is going to develop, so that's the next big system here. Now look at these temperatures. This here is, let me pull it over so you can see it. This is Friday, this is Saturday afternoon. Okay, upper 70s in Virginia. Okay, low to mid 70s from Boston down to DC. You have 70s in the Ohio Valley, southeastern states, some 80s there. This is a Sunday, same sort of thing, very warm temperatures for November, early November. Not unheard of, but very warm nonetheless. And then this is now for Monday. Now at this point we begin to see a little bit of a front coming southward, but it's a very weak front. Meanwhile, look at the warm temperatures. Virginia, 80, 82 degrees, 75 into southern New Jersey and Philly, and then down into the southeastern states. All the way to Georgia, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Now, that system which develops over the southeastern states, that is going to be a subtropical low or a coastal storm. I'm not sure which. It's definitely a hybrid. I think it's going to be a subtropical system. Now, what the European does is the European takes this system into the coast because the high forces it in. So it blocks it from escaping out to sea. So there's two options here. Either it's going to go into Georgia or it's going to go here. Oops. It's going to go into the Gulf of Mexico. So you can see the southeast flow very pronounced here. So this is now Thursday, a week from today. You can see a lot of rain here in the Carolinas, Virginia. And as the low moves around the western side of the high, the high is going to weaken here. The rain will spread up the Appalachians. So this could be a pretty stormy event. There's a lot of wind here on the coast, 20, 30, 40 mile winds. Not a true tropical storm, but it's a pretty significant coastal storm of some type or subtropical system. Now, the GFS does things a little differently. It is very weaker with this system, as you can see, and eventually actually takes it into the Gulf of Mexico a little bit because it's not a big, well organized system. And this has to do with the model parameterization and the initialization here. The high quality of the European model, it handles subtropical systems much better than the GFS does. So what happens is the GFS waits until the cold front comes through. The high is in Maine. It's not off the coast. If you notice, you see the high is here. It's very different. You can see it's not out to sea. It's here, and you're getting the moisture gets pulled in with a trough here, so it becomes one big system. I think this is a bullshit solution. I think this is crap. I like the European here a lot more for middle of next week. All right, so that takes us to middle of next week. Now, for next weekend, November 12th and 13th, we begin to see the pattern change a little bit here. The trough is still on the west coast, as you can see that. We still have a significant ridge, but we're getting more ridging in Alaska. And what that's doing is that's sending the northern jet further south, and it's ripping the top of the ridge off or flattening it, beginning to suppress the ridge a little bit. Not much, but a little bit here. And we begin to see temperatures move away from the real warmth to something that's a little colder. And you can see what I'm talking about here. Now, this is, again, this is Saturday to Sunday. Look at the min temperatures for Saturday morning. You can see the very warm temperatures still on the East Coast and New England, but look behind the Appalachians. Now, this isn't shattering cold or anything like that, but it's seasonal. You know, getting low mid 30s in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio in the middle of November, not a big deal. So let's not go crazy with this. It's not, but it is a step in the right direction towards more seasonal temperatures in mid-November. That's all, just more seasonal. Okay. We can also see the buildup of the cold air. One of the things about this kind of weather pattern is that it's allowing the cold air to really build up in western and north central Canada. And we can see that here with looking at the 850 temperatures. So this is the 850 temperatures for this week for Sunday. You can see there's a lot of impressive cold here developing north of the U.S.-Canada border. Not much south of the U.S.-Canada border. It's all north of it. It's just building and building and building. So, you know, often you hear people say, well, if you get too cold in November too early, you kind of waste the cold air. There is some science behind that. You want to have the cold air build up a lot, get really deep snow cover in Canada before you begin the heart of the winter. That's my preferred type of autumn to see how the things develop. I don't like having massive big surges of early season cold and snow in the Midwest or the Northeast because it gets everybody excited and hyped up, and then the cold air gets emptied out of Canada because it developed prematurely. And look what happens here. This is day 10. See how much colder it's getting? Look how the cold air really explodes here in day 10. Look at that. That is some nice cold air. So again, so you can see here a lot of cold air coming out of these maps here. Okay, now let's talk about the teleconnections. Now, teleconnections refer to climate anomalies, which are, or jet stream patterns as I like to call them, being related to each other at large distances, you know, thousands of miles apart. Some of the teleconnections are seasonal, such as, you know, ENSO, La Nina, El Nino with PDO. Other of them are what we call subseasonal, or S2S, subseasonal. And that's the new word of the day here. I want to make sure you can see that and make that subseasonal. Week 2 to week 6. So in North America, we have 4 primary teleconnections. So the Atlantic side here, we have the Arctic Oscillation and the NAO. On the Pacific side, we have the EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation, and the PNA. Okay? So we're going to take a look at them and see what's going on. Here is the Atlantic side. Now, when you're looking at these graphs, and this is from weather models, if you haven't seen it, they're very good, a lot of good stuff there. You can see yellow, orange, and red. Those are positive values. So here is the this is this here is the Arctic Oscillation. Let me post my arrow here. You can see. So we start out here. Look how positive the Arctic Oscillation is through November 9th, 10th, and 11th. You see how strong it is? See all the yellows and reds here? Very, very positive. Okay. Now towards the end, towards the middle of November, we begin to see a few blobs of neutral and negative, but there's still a lot of positive in here. So generally, by the time we get to mid-November, we're still in a positive NAO. Now here is the NAO, which is the Greenland block. Now right now it's neutral, but then you can see the middle of November, look what happens. It goes moderately positive for several days. Then it kind of flattens out, and then it gets a little positive again towards the middle of November. So again, so don't, there are some forecasters out there which are telling you things will look really interesting for the middle of November. No, they don't. They don't look interesting middle of November. It's a transition in the middle of November. Okay? Going from a very mild pattern to a colder pattern, you have to go through transition. And that's what we're looking at here. Just a transition. Okay. Now here is the Pacific side. Let me call it up. You can see it. Okay, so here is the East EPO, the Alaskan, the PNA pattern, which is the West Coast Ridge. So right now, look how negative it is. I want to show you something here. Let's show you. You can see it. Load this up a little bit so you can see it. Okay. So you see these negative values. See how dark the greens are, -3, -4, -5. Very, very negative values here. So that's what the colors look like represent. I just want you to see that in enlargement. But you can see the PNA is strongly negative. That means we have a West Coast ridge, a West Coast trough, very strong on the West Coast. And that makes sense given the pattern. This is a negative PNA pattern. Monster troughs on the West Coast of North America. That's a negative PNA pattern. So yes, this makes sense. We should be negative right now. We are. Now as we go past November 10th, we kind of go neutral. See that? Some indication goes negative, some have positive. It kind of goes neutral generally after November 10th or 15th. Now the EPO here, EPO, see that? That is the Alaskan ridge. Now when that's negative, you get a lot of cross-polar flow. That means you get air from Siberia coming into the North Pole and northern Canada. Now that's a good sign for cold air buildup. But unless you get the right pattern in the United States, the cold air just stays in Canada. So right now we are strongly positive, which means you don't have cross-polar flow. If you like cold weather and you like snow, you want the EPO to be negative. But again, you also need a path for the cold air to get into the United States. So what happens is around November 7th, look what happens here. It turns strongly negative. Look at this, negative, 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 all the way through November. This is good. This means we're going to start getting a really big buildup of cold air in much of Canada, which is what you want to see as you head towards late November and December. You want that cold air to build up. That's a good sign. But right now, there's no way for the cold air to get into the U.S. for the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Now, the polar vortex, we can take a look at that. Here we can see at the 10 millibars, we can look at the heights. Here it is now as of November 3rd, and then 10 days from now, it splits into, elongates, almost into, really it almost splits in half. I'm not sure if this qualifies as a stratospheric warming event, but it definitely splits into two pieces. This is very encouraging for as you enter the winter season. Okay, having the polar vortex into two pieces allows for a lot more blocking in the Arctic regions, which means more Greenland blocking and more Arctic oscillation going negative as you go into the heart of winter. This is a good sign. We want to make certain that this holds and this is correct, but this is a good sign for the future, late in November. The MJO, let's take a look at that. Okay, here's the GFS on the left and here's the European on the right. So look at the blue lines and the red lines and the purple lines. You can see the MJO, let me call it up here. So you can, here we go. So there it is right now. It comes out, follow the red line, okay, in November, phase 7 here, briefly into phase 8, then it goes back into the neutral circle for the middle of November. Then it comes back out late November, heading towards phase 8 by early December. See that? November of 26, 28, 29, 30th there. And then it looks like it's headed for phase 8 here. See that? Okay. Now here's the European. Same sort of thing. Brings it up through phase 7, back into the neutral circle middle of November, then back into phase 7 by the end of November, and it appears to be headed towards phase 8 by the end of the month. Maybe. Okay. Well, what does that mean? All right. Phase 7 in November during La Nina is a very blah pattern. Okay, you have a little bit of southern jet stream, some ridging in western Canada. It's a wet pattern for the plains and Midwest, but it doesn't do anything for the East Coast. It's fairly mild, as you can see. And that's where we are right now. If we go into phase 7 in December, things get more interesting. First, you have a split flow here. You see the negative anomaly, so then it splits. You have this huge positive anomaly right here. And call it up so you can see it. So this here is a positive anomaly. This is a negative EPO. strong ridging here. Cross polar flow pulling the cold air from the Siberia into Canada and eastern Canada. Okay, you have an ocean low in southeastern Canada, which is like a 50-50 low. Now the NAO is neutral, you can see that, but we still have a southeast ridge. So this is a transition pattern. This is a transition pattern. This is a type of pattern which could produce early season snowstorms for New England and the Great Lakes. That sort of thing. Okay, so this is a developing pattern. Now, here is the CFS, which takes us to early December. Now that has it going into phase 8 and then back in the neutral circle, then back into phase 7. Also the same sort of thing. If we were to go into phase 8 in December, if, okay, as these models are showing, maybe, okay, now you're off to the races. This is a winter storm pattern. You have a huge block in northwest Canada, very strong negative EPO. You have blocking in Greenland, which is a negative Greenland block, NAO. You have negative AO. Okay, you have a split flow. You have a trough on the west coast, but the Arctic air is coming down from Canada, and then you have this big negative anomaly right here. So you can see it right there. Look at this thing. Okay, the entire northeast quadrant, and you have southern jet stream energy here. This is all sorts of storminess. If this is right, we don't know that it's right. If it's right, okay. All right. Indeed, look what the CFS is doing here for the middle of December. Boom. That's a snowstorm, folks. If that's right. It's the CFS. It's middle December. Who the hell knows? But I'm just saying, it kind of matches that. You see how it matches it? You see how it matches it? Okay. Now, beyond that, okay, let's get more sensible here. Let's talk about the end of November. All right. So here, this is the GFS for November 24, and then we have 25. And the bottom right is the GFS for the extended GFS, December 6th. What we're seeing is, see the trough here, right here? Okay, so there's our trough right here. See it? Okay, we still have a ridge over the Midwest. It's not as strong as amplified, okay, but it's a kind of a zonal flow. So this is around Thanksgiving. It's a mild pattern, not extreme, but seasonal mild, okay? Then we get towards end December. Now we're seeing more ridging here. Look at the block developing in Greenland. And because the block develops in Greenland, the trough, which is here, now moves to the Middle West. See what happens? And the ridge, which was here, gets flattened. So this block is huge. This block is huge right there. That's the piece. Okay, that's the first week of December. Does any other model support that in the extended outlook? Yeah. Here's the Canadian, weekly Canadian. Has a nice trough in the Midwest, East Coast, some blocking, nice cold flow, not extreme, but it's there. And then here is the European. This is the weekly model. From when did this come out? This was on November 3rd. Yeah. So you can see here. There's a very nice trough, kind of in the middle of the portion of the country. But again, the key point here is look at the strong ridge. Oops, didn't need to do that. There's a strong ridge here on the west coast, and there's the block in Greenland. That's very nice to see. Okay, now this matches the winter forecast. There's a lot of data which shows a negative NAO going into a good portion of the winter. So this is not a surprise to see that kind of blocking in Greenland. All right, then here, and then look at this. This is December 12th. Wow. I mean, just wow. That is screaming winter storm for the eastern United States, if that's right. It's a long way off. I'm just saying we're going in that direction. It looks that way favorable as we come out of Thanksgiving into December. Just right now, okay? And why is this important? Because we haven't seen this in early December in years. In years. For the last 8-10 years, the Decembers have been extremely mild and with no big significant winter storms for much of the eastern half of the country. So this is, I think, significant. One last point I want to bring out here, the La Nina. Okay, there we see it, and you can see this is, there it was in September. First, you can see that, okay, and then very nicely, and you can see the warm water here in the west coast and along off the coast of Japan, and really warm water there. But if you compare that to what's happened here, you can see that it looks like the La Nina is trying to weaken a little bit, and we'll see that also in additional graphs. The next time I do an update, I'll have better images that show that La Nina is weakening. I do believe it will weaken in December. I talked about that in the winter forecast. I do think it's going to weaken in December as we go into January, February, and March. I think the La Nina will be gone. So again, if you get a chance, go to the website weatherrisk.com. Take a look. You'll see the winter forecast there, the short form and the high resolution one for $10. And of course, with the $10 one, you also get a new winter update in the third week of November, the third week of December, the third week of January. All right, key points here. It stays mild pattern right through November 10th or 11th at least. Okay, we have a positive Arctic oscillation, we have a positive NAO Greenland block, and we have a negative PNA, which means West Coast trough, and a positive EPO. Now, there's also a possible subtropical low here coming in November 9th or 10th. Okay, so there we go. That's the coastal storm. Okay, this kind of pattern is great for snow and cold air buildup in western and central Canada. For the eastern US, if you want early cold, it sucks. But if you want the ice box to get really cold, you want that. Okay, now the pattern change starts when the EPO goes negative. We talked about that before. When the EPO starts going negative, which you can see here, that's when the pattern change starts. Okay, it brings in cross-polar flow. Canada turns a lot colder. Ridge forms in Alaska. It's the beginning of things to change. November 15 to 25 sees a shift back to near normal temperatures north of Interstate 80, and then seasonally mild between Interstate 40 and Interstate 80. And if you don't know what your interstates are, you should. Interstate 40 runs from North Carolina to Tennessee into southern Missouri, and then Interstate 80 runs from New York City to Chicago, and then over into Iowa. So, a step towards that way. It's going to be an evolutionary process. The key issue here is, does the MJO move into phase 8 in early December? If that happens, if that favors an early season, significant East Coast snowstorm, or a MIDS, which is Midwest significant snowstorm. So we'll see. And of course, the other concern is going to be, is La Nina weakening? I think it is. I think it's beginning to weaken. I don't know that yet. We'll watch it over the month of November and see if it actually begins to weaken. I think December is going to be the critical month, whether La Nina weakens or not. This is Meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll see you over on the website and over on the Twitter page, and of course on the Facebook page.